Yes, champions, welcome to the show. This is the Lights Out Performance podcast. I'm your host, I'm Kieran Leinster. This is a show aimed at improving any white collar boxer's performance. Here we cover all things training, nutrition, mindset, the lot. Now, don't switch off if you're a professional or an amateur boxer or just a boxing enthusiast, because what we learn here will be beneficial to you as well. The topics and the themes and what we do here kind of transcends throughout boxing. There's not a huge amount of difference between, say, boxing professionally and boxing amateur, or boxing amateur and boxing white collar. They are very, very similar, but in their own ways, they're also very, very different. But a lot of the training aspects, training approaches, nutrition approaches, again, they're going to transcend. They're going to be very similar throughout. So yeah, don't switch off if you are amateur or pro, because you'll still get a few good little take-homes from this. But anyway, this is the 10 biggest mistakes that I made in my boxing career when I was coming through, especially my white collar days when I was younger, when I didn't really have any knowledge about training, nutrition, all of that stuff, and I just jump on whatever bandwagons were kind of fashionable at that period of time. I do see a lot of these being acted out and still being done. So if you realise that you are doing some of these, just try to stop doing them. You will benefit, trust me. So first and foremost is killing yourself in every single session. Now, don't get me wrong, we have sessions where we are looking to improve our fitness. We have sessions where we're looking to improve our skills. We have sessions where we're looking to just improve our mental resilience, because all these aspects need to be challenged, pushed, and improved upon in the boxing gym. But you don't necessarily want to combine all of those every single session, because all you're going to end up doing is burning yourself out and falling out of love with the sport. I did find this at some period of time when I was boxing, is I got just destroyed and utterly beasted all of the time. And yeah, it did get to that point in time when I was a bit like, I just don't know if I can maintain this. It was just so intense, 24/7. Yeah, so we're looking back at some of mine, we'd be training twice a day, 6 days a week. Filthy amounts. Considering you're only doing like 3 to 6 2-minute rounds, you're training like you're fighting for a world title. And the difference between, say, even like lower professionals and the top tier professionals is you've got a job. You've got to try and recover in between those sessions. The thing about training this hard is you need to establish a good form of balance between training really, really hard and also resting, because rest is just as important as training, because you can't improve, you can't have the physiological adaptations take part within your body from the training unless you rest. Your body grows and improves through that rest. So if you're not giving your body any opportunity to rest, that is when you start bridging that kind of overtraining. That's when you just start feeling sluggish, and then your skills and your fitness just start going backwards and you start reverting. Now, yes, you might have experienced this in some stages of the campaign, because I think as boxers we all kind of do, because it's a really weird thing, like knowing that you've got that fight, you have that date, you don't really want to chill out because you're like, oh, I should be doing more. And then you obviously get the 5 a.m. clubbers that are like, oh, you should go running at 5 a.m. because your opponent won't be doing this, and do what your opponent's not doing. They're there just to make you, I don't know if it's to make you feel bad about yourself, but it's to make you try and push yourself. I don't know if it's meant to be motivational. It's only motivational just to be like, basically, if you're not dead, you're not trying hard enough. But I think we're kind of getting to a good point in the world now where science is kind of taking over this old school just geezer approach where run harder, run faster, run further, and train a bit harder and you should win your fight. So yeah, hopefully we're getting to a point in time where we can do that. But what I would say is, yes, you need certain workouts that are going to challenge you mentally, that you're just going to be like, you want to stop but you keep getting pushed through. It's, my old coach had this famous little saying, which was, there's always one more round. And so you'd think you'd be done, you'd have done like however many rounds of sparring, you'd be absolutely smoked, and you'd be like, one more round. Or I remember a time when we were running around Battersea Park, the track there, and I had 3 guys with me, and every time I did a lap, a new person would run with me. And so I was going to do 4 laps with each of those, and I think it worked out about 3 miles. So you end up doing that in. I remember that last one, I was like, it's my last lap, the 12th lap, and I absolutely gunned it. And then I finished, and I was literally throwing up, and he's like, 1 more round, and that was like one of those times when that old school boxing approach kind of takes over, and you're just like, I felt just physically just sick, and yeah, you can spit your dummy out, but that's not the kind of world we live in, is it? You just gotta fight through those times. But like I said, you should incorporate those things, because you need to have your mettle tested in boxing. You need to know that when you go into a fight, you've got the heart to carry you through. You know that when you take a shot, or you're feeling tired, you're feeling knackered, that you have the ability to fight through that. But yeah, don't then only ever do sessions like that where you're just killing yourself, because yeah, you're going to have a very short career if that is the case. And the second one kind of leads on to this a little bit, but it's sparring too hard every single session. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. Like, you shouldn't be having more than kind of 1 big sparring session a week. You can do light sparring. It is a real thing, you know. I know a lot of people might not understand that, but like, you call it like skill sparring or touch sparring. Like, you're working on your defensive movement, working on your slips, counters and stuff, but you're just not slugging it out. And again, just like before, you need to have heavy spars in the build up to camp, but you don't need to be having them all the time, because it's not going to do anything for you, your mindset, your mental health, just any form of longevity that you want within the sport. If you're constantly getting banged in the head and like powerfully, yeah, you're going to struggle, especially when you kind of hit the older ages. You're going to be dribbling, mate. So I would, minimise the amount of like heavy spars that you have. Yeah, by all means, have like plenty of like touch and skill spars, because again, it's boxing. You need to be able to read your opponent. You need to be able to gauge that distance. You need to be able to have a good eye into the way by the time you get into a fight. Yes, you can read and stuff, but from a heavy sparring perspective, again, you have that mental resilience aspect that you do need to get in. So you need to have those spars where you're just getting shark tanked and you're in there with just killers. And yes, you're not fighting to survive as such, but you're getting pushed to your skill and your fitness extremes, so that you know that when you are absolutely gashed, you're not just going to bottle in, like, oh, I don't want to fight. And you need to experience that outside of training, so that when you get into the ring, you're not experiencing that in the ring, 100%. But again, you don't need to be doing this all the time. Don't do this all the time. There's a really good book called Damage, and it's all about kind of CTE in boxing and combat sports. And and that's the one thing that they say in there, and it's the thing that really, really degrades people's mindset and the cognitive performance, their mental health, is just taking huge shots consistently over extended periods of time. And especially like in your spars, because sometimes your fights will be easier than half your spars were. Like, some of our spars were brutal, like, but they're the best spars. Like, again, I know it's hard, because when you're in there, it's fucking great. You just love it, don't you? It's amazing. But again, it's tough. It's tough trying to be like, don't do that, calm down, because you might just slip and bang a shot in, and then it's like, oh, it's a little bit too hard. So he then wants to get you back, and it just progresses from there. So the next is not doing enough strength and conditioning, and I would say this is definitely one for myself. I did a fair bit with my old coach. Was quite on it. Very old school in his approach, like just throwing around big heavy medicine balls and doing all that, and there was no real programming, or there's no real ideology behind it, and it was just throw it around, get bigger, get stronger. He was very good, but we did a lot of conditioning, don't get me wrong. But I know a lot of boxers don't really do anything in the way of strength work. I know there's a lot of people that are still stuck in that old school mindset of lifting weights makes you big, makes you heavy. And again, that is very, very untrue. That is not true at all. If you lift weights in a slow, methodical manner, like say a bodybuilder where you're just grinding those reps out, yeah, by all means you will get slow. But we can also lift weights in a way that is going to optimize and maximize your fast twitch muscle fibers. It's going to make you more powerful, more explosive. And you've got to remember, what is power? Power is just strength at speed. So the more maximal strength you have, the stronger you are physically, the more powerful you are. So that is one thing I would say, is trying to build in consistent, and that's the main word here, is consistent, not just doing it for a week or two, consistent strength work and consistent conditioning work. If you want to be the best fighter when you get into the ring, you need to kind of incorporate this. Boxing has been slow to kind of incorporate this into the general kind of at general practitioner level. When you see things like UFC and mixed martial arts and different combat sports, they're very, very high on it now, and they include it quite a lot. But for some reason, boxing's still a little bit left back in the dark ages, isn't it? But it's making headway, it's making improvements, it's making progress. So sure, like I see it now, like a lot of the people I do speak to are doing a lot more. So it's good to see, it's good to see. If you're not doing anything, you have no idea where to start, shoot me a DM. That is kind of what I do now. I've kind of transitioned away from competing and go more into the strength and conditioning side. Also, there was Benazokwe, who is a couple of podcasts before. You can listen to my chat with him. Hit him up. Just find someone who's going to help you out. The best thing you can do for your boxing is becoming the most fit and powerful that you can be. And the way you would do that is by following a structured strength conditioning routine. Training in sweatsuits is the next one. I see this all the time. So even in one of the gyms that I work at, it's much more like a boxing fitness gym. It's not a competitive gym, but all the people come in there all the time wearing sweatsuits. And they say that it's to help them lose weight. No, it's not helping you. It's not helping you lose body fat. Yes, it's helping you lose weight because it's just dehydrating the hell out of you. So yes, by all means, if you just want to be super dehydrated, do loads of skipping, training, running, whatever you want to do in a sweatsuit. But just know that it is not making you lose body fat. Because I know most people, when they say they want to lose weight, they don't just want to lose weight. Most of them want to actually lose that dad bod, or they want to lose the love handles or whatever. Sweatsuits should only be used, especially for competitive boxers, should only be used in the run-up to a fight on fight week. So when I say in the run-up to a fight, I mean like the couple of days, or not even a couple, like the day or two leading up to the weigh-in. You are only using a sweatsuit to get rid of your body water. That is it. You're only using that to dehydrate. And again, I'm going to preface that by saying you shouldn't be trying to cut too much water for weigh-ins. Depending on how long you've got after your weigh-in, between weigh-in and fight, like whether it's same day or whether it's 24 hours, that obviously determines how much you can lose. But quite simply, you should not be losing much weight in the run-up to a weigh-in, because you're just going to absolutely kneecap your performance. If you're doing on the same day weigh-in, literally I would not be trying to do much more than like a couple of % of your body weight in a sweatsuit. So that is like, if you are 75 kilos, that's less than a kilo of weight that you want to be cutting, because you don't have the time to rehydrate. Now, not only is that going to really hinder your performance, but also when you dehydrate the cerebral fluid that protects your brain. That is the fluid that stops your brain just rattling around, and it is a safety blanket per se for your brain. So when you dehydrate that massively, because you've probably most likely been cutting down your water in the run up to your weigh-ins, you're then doing extra dehydration stuff like hot baths of Epsom salts, probably saunas, all this stuff. By the time that you get into that fight, you are getting punched in the head and your brain is going all over the place. Why do you think we've never had a death in heavyweight boxing? It's because they don't have to dehydrate. They can come in at the biggest weights they are. And then you've got to actually think about the caliber and the power of the punches they are taking and just eating consistently. Yet they've never had a death. They've never had a serious injury or illness. And by serious injury or illness, I mean like brain aneurysms, things like that, at heavyweight. And a majority of it comes down to dehydration tactics. And also, as I was kind of saying before about sparring super hard, like sparring really, really hard when you're dehydrated, all these things really start to add up. And again, just from like a longevity standpoint, we want you to still be like a normal functioning human being when you walk away from the sport. So by minimizing the amount of dehydration that you are doing, you're gonna really, really do that. And again, you need to think, especially for like a white collar and amateur fighters, you're not getting paid for this. Even at the lower levels of professional, like unless you're selling lots of tickets, you're not really getting paid for this. So why are you putting your life and your health on the line for something that realistically you're only hindering your performance as well within that? Being more hydrated means that you will perform better. You have better reaction times. All aspects of your performance will improve the more hydrated that you are. So you are much better off fighting at a bit of a higher weight than killing yourself to make weight, because by the time you actually get in the ring, you're going to be about 50% of what you could be. And again, you're not going to have the time to replenish the salts, the liquids, the anything if you are doing same day weighing. So just be careful with that. And another thing that also goes back to a conversation I had with Ben on the podcast was those little, like, you know, the Bane masks they go over your face. They're like quote unquote altitude training masks, and they replicate training at altitude. The only thing that replicates training at altitude is training at altitude. So don't waste your time, your effort, your money. That all you're doing with those is just kind of running with a hand over your mouth and you're just stopping yourself breathing. It's not doing anything for you other than making your life a lot fucking harder. So just don't worry about it. Don't waste your time, your effort, or your energy, honestly. It's not worth it. Next, we have running far too much without intent. The reason I say running without intent is because when I was boxing, it was always just kind of like, just go out for a run, improve your fitness. Go out for a run, that'll improve your fitness. And yeah, it does, don't get me wrong. Like I was always super, super fit. But boxing is just hit training essentially. Each round of boxing is hit. Your heart rate is essentially red zone throughout. It is very, very high intensity in that ring, as anyone who has been in that ring will know. So running and training your body to perform at kind of a lower to medium intensities isn't very effective at all. You need to be incorporating lots of sprint training, because it's going to train your body to perform at those higher intensities. And that is what we need to do. Things like training your body to buffer the acidosis that comes in your muscles when you start throwing loads of combinations. That is what we need to train our body to do. We need to get our body used to working at these very, very high intensities. Yeah, going for a run, don't get me wrong, when you're going for like quite a fast-paced run, yeah, it's pretty good for your fitness. It does help build your aerobic base and that, but what you're better off doing is doing more green zone runs and then doing red zone runs. So green zone runs to really build your aerobic base. Do a couple of those. I also kind of incorporate those as recovery runs because they're not very intense, hence why they're called green zone. Crazy. And then high intensity work. And again, depending on where you are in camp, depends on how long you've given yourself to train, that will determine what kind of angle you're going for with those. Whether you're going for longer work times, looking at like 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off, looking at 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off, or when you're getting a bit closer to a fight and you're looking to really boost that speed and that intensity, and you're kind of looking at maybe 12 seconds on, 48 seconds off, 15 on, 15 off, like that side of thing, 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, but you're really looking to just maximize that speed and power that short, sharp bursts of energy. Each of these has a different utilization for our body. It's going to help our training by incorporating all of these, but in a systematized approach. So you're not just going to be throwing all these in randomly throughout the week. Like I said, you would periodize this into your actual program so that by the time you come to your fight night, you're peaking. You've covered all bases and you've covered all your kind of fitness aspects from an anaerobic standpoint and an aerobic standpoint. So when you get into the ring, you're not going to gas out. That's the biggest thing. So yeah, by all means, go for your runs, but I would say just do some more kind of green zone runs on those kind of longer runs. Use those as recovery runs. That's what I do with a lot of my fighters. And then for the higher intensity work, make sure you're doing at least a couple of those during the week as well, because you will get the biggest bang for your buck. If you've never done any anaerobic work, honestly, the caliber of improvement that you will find in your performance from doing these runs, or well, it doesn't have to be in a run, it could be an assault bike, it could be anything, but from doing red zone training, the caliber of improvement that you will find in your performance will be astronomical. Honestly, it will unlock a whole new level of performance. And now the next one, this kind of alludes back to what I was talking about before, which is doing crazy weight cuts. I did some fucking ridiculous weight cuts. Thinking about it now, I'm just like, I did a £7. This was the morning of the fight, so I turned up at the weigh-in, and where we used to have our weigh-ins, there'd normally be like horse racing tracks, so there'd always be saws and stuff downstairs. I missed weight, and I had to cut £7. I don't know what I was doing in the run-up to ever being £7 overweight by the time I got to weigh-in, but yeah, from there I had to literally go downstairs and cut £7. Then come back up and weigh in. And probably looking at that now, that's probably not even legal, like for a promotion to tell you to do that. But you know, they've got their own interests, and the fight must go on, as they say. But yeah, I remember doing that and being in the sauna, like towels all over me, shadow boxing, because obviously I had like a really old school coach, and he was just like, go on. Yeah, this is how we used to do it in my day, like spitting buckets and that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, he was mad. I'll try to get him on actually, because he's quality. He was quality. So yeah, again, when it comes to weight cuts, similar to sort of tips that I gave before, like the more weight that you cut, the more you hinder your performance. If you go back and listen to my podcast with Liam Williams, a nutritionist, he talks a lot about hydration and dehydration there and how much that can really affect your performance. So yes, make sure you go back and listen to that, because honestly, dehydration is an absolute killer. And again, you're better off just fighting the weight above rather than just killing yourself to make weight and getting absolutely smoked in camp as a result, because it's just stupid. It is just stupid. Like with boxing still kind of all combat sports are kind of fixing this old school approach that you need to be the biggest of the lightest weight you can be. And don't get me wrong, it does make a lot of sense. And the unfortunate thing is that you always get these just superhuman people who are just huge for the weight. And unfortunately, unless you're one of those like genetically blessed people, you're just gonna have to suck up and you're gonna have to deal with that, because it's always going to be the case. Like, I remember meeting Anthony Agogo. He was training at us with our gym for a little while when I was pro. At State of Mind over in Hammersmith. He came and joined the stable. The guy's massive. That geezer is huge. Like honestly, I think he's about 6'3", maybe 6'4", and he was just a big bloke, and he used to fight at my weight. He used to fight 72.5 kilos. I was just like, I remember standing next to him and be like, not a fucking chance, mate. It was like, yeah, wild. Yeah, you always just get those people that just defy the laws of physics and somehow just manage to just pull that stuff off. But yeah, if you're not one of them, don't worry about it. Don't kill yourself to make weight, honestly, because I know it's better to say that you hopefully won't be fighting one of them when you jump up, but you might have to fight with them at your weight. So yeah, do yourself a favour, just from like a longevity standpoint. Obviously, when you get to the point when you're getting paid good money for your fights and stuff, by all means start doing bigger weight cuts. But until then, what's the point? All you're doing is increasing your chance of injury, you're increasing your chance of getting hurt, and you're decreasing your longevity in the sport of boxing. And if you're kind of like the style of fighter that I was, like, I'm in the pocket, kind of that Ricky Hatton style, like jumping around, cutting angles, just getting hit a lot as well, and you want to think about your longevity as a sane and relatively intelligent human being as well, because the more you get punched in the head, like, that does have repercussions down the line, unfortunately. Right, so the next one we have doing minimal flexibility and mobility drills. Now, your body is what we call the kinetic chain, and there's a thing we call kinetic chain sequencing, and that is your ability to transfer energy from your foot. So when you drive off that foot and you go to throw that punch, it comes out, that energy travels all the way down throughout your body, pop, comes straight at your fist. Now, being able to transfer that energy from your foot to your fist efficiently and effectively is what we call that kinetic chain sequencing. So, one of the biggest leaks here, one of the biggest energy leaks that we find is a lack of mobility. So where you have tight muscles, you can't get the full range of motion with the certain movements. So when you're trying to throw punches, you're compensating by using different muscle groups because everything's tight and it's not moving fluidly, and it's just not moving congruently. It's not just like going through. So one thing I would say is make sure that every single session you do mobility. Start your session with mobility drills, then go into a session and finish with some form of flexibility. And even on your days off, do flexibility and mobility. Get into yoga, do something like that. Just find some good mobility drills. Again, one of the big things that you can do for longevity of your boxing career, and also the probably longevity of life as well, because so many people are just so unflexible now. Like, the amount of people that can't touch their toes is just ridiculous. And that's not they can't touch their toes because they're super fat. It's just because they have no like posterior chain flexibility. That stuff does catch up with you at some point. Again, lack of flexibility, lack of mobility dramatically increases your risk of injury and dramatically decreases your kind of longevity in the boxing world. So just make sure you do some form of mobility. Check me out on Instagram. I've got loads of that mobility videos and that on there. So head over there and have a gander. This is a big one. The old no carbs before Marb saying. Boxers cutting out carbs. Now, I used to do this a lot, and I remember this one sparring session. One of my friends who was helping me with my nutrition, funny enough, he was peeled, but he was a bodybuilder, and he was like, "Oh mate, you're going to go on to a carb cycling split." I was doing 2 days off, 1 day on of carbs. Now, for a bodybuilder, that's fine because you're not getting punched in the head. But for a boxer, we have a different type of performance. We are not bodybuilders. We are looking to perform at our best. Now, in order to do that, your body needs glycogen to perform at high levels of intensity. So, when you are sparring, when you are fighting, your heart rate is at that red zone. Your body needs carbs because the fastest way for your body to get energy is from digesting and transferring those carbs into energy. Fat and stuff, that's just too slow. So you need to be fueled up correctly. Again, go and listen to my podcast with Liam Williams, a nutritionist. He goes into good detail about all of this. But quite simply, just stop eating like a bodybuilder to optimize your performance. You're not going to step on stage in a little pair of budgie smugglers. That's not what we do. We're warriors. We need to eat, we need to train like warriors. So yes, don't cut out carbs. Anyway, so this sparring session, I remember going in there and I hadn't had carbs for like 2 days. And honestly, I was a walking punch bag. It was just, I was all over the place. I was all over the place. I just didn't have that. I had no sharpness. I had just no explosivity anything. I was good at kind of dancing around and flicking a jab out, but kind of more than that, and the odd like 1-2 was done, mate. Absolutely nothing. So yeah, it's one of them. You need carbs. Carbs are your friend. Like, don't get rid of the carbs, because I know they will get demonised and that in the media now, but trust me, if you want to get beat up, cut them out. If you want to perform at your peak, keep them going, baby. Right, so the next is not periodizing your training. So when you think about boxing, you have your training camps, but outside your training camp for your fight, that kind of 8 to 12 week training camp, in the time between fights, that's when you're going to get the most improvements in your training, because you're not trying to cut weight, you're not trying to do any of that, and you have more time, more energy, more everything to focus in on your training. So what I would definitely say is, after your fight, obviously have a little bit of time off. Get straight back in. When you get straight back into the gym, get back into your S&C work. Because again, in that time between fights, that is when you're going to get the most gains, as they say. And then also throughout your training camp, you shouldn't just be doing the same thing week in, week out, week in, week out. As you get to that as you get towards the end of that training camp, things need to change, because what you're focusing in on needs to change. And again, how you approach your taper week and what you do in your taper week, again, you need to be conscious of what you're doing there as well. If you've not been doing any like maximal strength work throughout the start of camp, you're going to be looking at more kind of maximal strength stuff. As you're coming into the few weeks leading up to the fight, kind of 4 or 6 weeks out, you're going to be doing a lot more kind of speed based work. And then when you get into the final few weeks, you're going to be looking at more punch specific speed work as well. But make sure that you're building the foundations outside of fight camp, because that's going to make the time that you spend in fight camp a lot easier. It's like those people that just between fights get super fat and they spend their whole training camp just trying to lose weight. It's like the level of improvement you would find in your training camp if you just behaved a little bit and didn't just go full retard outside of your fight camp. If like between the fight camps, if you'd just maintained your weight even a little bit, or obviously you're always going to put weight on, but like not just ballooning up, and then you come back into camp and you've just got not an easy amount, but you've got a steady amount that you can lose, and you can build that into your training program, it's fine. But where these people that come in like losing like 10, 15 kilos in like 8 weeks, and you're like, you're just killing your body's ability to perform. It's craziness. But yeah, make sure that you kind of periodize your training throughout camp, and not just adding on an extra mile in your long runs, which is pretty much all we used to do for mine. But yeah, make sure that what you do within your training camp, especially your S&C work, is cultivated around performing at your best on fight night. Again, we're always looking to peak on that night. So everything that we do is working towards that. Finally, kind of similar to what I said before about the long runs, it's not doing enough sprint work, not doing nearly enough sprint work. So especially for white collar boxers, we are in a sprint based sport. We're not professional boxers. We're not doing 12 3-minute rounds, 10 3-minute rounds. We can't be taking feel out rounds. We can't be doing any of that sort of stuff. We need to get in there and get the job done. Simple as that. You can't be hanging around, you can't be slow. So everything that we do, it's all very highly intense. When you're in that ring, you want to be going for it, sprinting all the time. Again, you're doing 3 to 6 2-minute rounds with a minute off. You need to make sure that everything you do for your training is putting you in the best position to perform at your peak for that fight night. And the best way you can do that is by sprints. So champions, hope you enjoyed today's session. Hit me up on Instagram. I'll be putting out Q&As and things like that. So make sure you jump on there and shoot me any questions that you have. Champions, take it easy. Good to speak. It's Kieran signing out.